Welcome to the podcast She is Fab, where we discuss all things fab, women empowerment, and life coaching. My name is Evelyn, also known as the Fab Chieftess, and I am a mindset transformation coach.
Welcome to another episode of the She is Fab podcast. My name is Evelyn, your host, mindset transformation coach. And today I have Angela with me. She is a DIY travel mentor. It's both her business and a pleasure to equip millennial women with the tools to be able to take travel bucket lists from idea to reality. Welcome, Angela, or Angie. Do you prefer Angie?
Angie's fine. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here and give some gems to your audience.
Yes, I'm so happy to have you and excited for the conversation. So, flesh that out for us a bit more. Tell us more about your background and why you do what you do.
Yeah, so it started in 2015, actually, when I was in college, through 2010 and 2010 to 2015. I was thinking to myself, oh my God, like I really want to be able to travel places, but I didn't know the first step of how to even plan my own travel because it was basically all my parents doing the planning and we would do little road trips and all that stuff. So I'm like, okay, like I don't know how to travel plan first off. And then as a college student, you're on a limited budget anyways. So you're thinking, okay, I probably have to get a big girl job. I have to, do all the typical things. And then maybe when I'm in my late 20s, early 30s, then I can start thinking about traveling. But there was just an itching in me. I was like, okay, like I'm going to figure this out. So in
Hmm.
2015, I finally did figure it out. And I went on my first domestic trip to Ohio, of all places, because I'm a super tennis fan. And there was a tournament that was going on. My favorite player actually loves that tournament. So I went there.
Mm.
I met up with a bunch of people that I actually met on Twitter. And so it was me going on my first solo trip and then also meeting new people. So I'm like, oh my God, how is this going to be? And it ended up being the best experience of my life. And I was like, oh my God, I want to do more. So I went on a first like international trip to Canada, absolutely loved it. So I was like, okay, now I think I can take a bigger step and go full international. So I planned out a whole week trip to London and my heart was in my throat. I was like, "Oh my God, like I'm really going to the UK on my own and I really don't know what's going on there." And I was lost and starry-eyed and I thought, "What did I get myself into?" And then within a day, I adapted and I was like, "Okay, I did a domestic trip. I went, just outside of the US to Canada and now I did a full international trip, so I can pretty much take on anything." And then from there, I've just been planning trips on my own, both domestically and internationally. And then
Mhm.
with the pandemic, I just thought, like, okay, I can either do one of two things. I can just wallow and be miserable about what was happening in the pandemic, or actually do something and be proactive. So I developed a business idea, and then I was like, oh, yeah, like so many people have asked me how I actually plan my own trips and how I'm able to do what I do. So then I decided to like funnel all that passion into helping other people in the same position that I was in.
That's amazing. I mean, first of all, let's talk about some of the challenges, right? Because you are a woman and you're a woman of color, and there are things that can present themselves when you are traveling, let alone traveling by yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And that's always, I think that's just the biggest thing with traveling solo is just you become really cognizant of everything, like your surroundings, the fact that you are a woman, so you have to just be extra careful, like, in terms of maybe walking somewhere at night or just the people that you're hanging out with in general. And then always having those emergency contacts and also looking at blogs or looking at different things around and seeing like what other female travelers have experienced. So always doing your research beforehand so you can be really equipped whenever you go somewhere.
So I will confess, I've actually never done a solo trip. Like I've traveled solo, but at the destination, I know someone, right? Like if it's somebody that we're meeting up to travel at that point, or if I'm visiting, family, like even going internationally, I've traveled internationally, but I've met up with people that I know at the destination. So I would love to one day take a solo trip, but like you, I probably have the same feeling where I'm like, unsure. There might be some fear, some hesitancy, because again, there's things that can present themselves when you're traveling as a woman by yourself.
Right, exactly. And I think that was the first step in my unlocking because I just had all those fears and you kind of almost put yourself like in other people's experiences, like, okay, like they experienced this kind of thing. And since you haven't, like you had that extra fear. But now I
Mm-hmm.
just tell people, like, you just have to take those steps because not everyone's experiences are going to be your own. So you really
Mm-hmm.
have to take that first step and actually just, take in all the surroundings on your own. And then as you keep doing it more and more, you just get to learn and adapt to so many different situations. So you feel a lot
Mm-hmm.
more comfortable.
I have a girlfriend who travels alone all the time, and I'm always like in awe of her. So, in relation to your story, you did domestic travel first, then you did Canada, and then you did the UK. Are you going to next travel to a place where the language might be completely different, where you might have a little more trouble communicating?
Yeah, so the place that in terms of language, like I did go to Mexico and that was a little bit of a change, but it was really great because I think the biggest thing when you're going to another country and the language is different, it's really important to be adaptive yourself. So, okay, there are some people that are going to speak English, but they really appreciate it if you actually just try and just say a few words and actually
Mm-hmm.
conversate with them. So, they'll help you out if you're struggling a little bit, but at least if you try to know, basic words like, okay, you're asking for something simple, a thank you, you're welcome, something like that, then it just shows a little bit more respect and
Mm-hmm.
cognizance for the place that you are, and instead of almost being um, kind of like an ignorant American, like you shouldn't really be
Mm-hmm.
that way when you're traveling to somewhere that isn't your own country. It's someone else's country that you just happen to be occupying that space.
That's a good point you brought up, right? So, Americans, I'm sorry to say this, don't come for me. We're entitled.
We
And so
are.
when we travel, yeah, when we travel, we expect that the rest of the world is going to adapt to us. And that's not the right frame of thought or way that you should think. Case in point, I had a trip a couple of years back where I went with a group of friends to Paris and then Portugal. Portugal was a real destination, but we stopped in Paris for a weekend. Two of them had gone to school in Paris for a year. So they had a little bit, of French under their belt.
Right.
I studied my butt off to have some decent conversational French. And so the one who ended up speaking the most for the group was me. But then get this, the original plan was to go to Paris, not Portugal. The
Right.
plan was changed last minute. So then here we are going to Portugal, and they're relying on my Spanish to translate into Portuguese because there's some commonalities, but not enough. So it was just,
Right.
we still had an amazing time, but we had some challenges with the language.
Yeah, so that was like me in Mexico a little bit, but all the people were super, super nice. And it was the case also for when I went to Switzerland and I went to Geneva. I can do
Mm-hmm.
mostly conversational French, so it was fine for me to have small conversations. But yeah, I think just the trying is the most important thing and then going from there.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about, you're doing this for yourself, but you're at a point where now you're trying to help others do that. You mentioned that folks would ask you, what your process is. So currently, are you offering services where you are planning things for people or helping them plan things?
Yeah, so the way I go about my process is I don't really love the notion of a one-to-one model because I feel like, okay, like if you have someone planning your trip, then every time you want to go on a trip, you have to go back to either that same person or another person. So that kind of takes your power away because you have to depend on someone else. So what
Mm-hmm.
I do is that I have my two courses. There's a domestic version for US citizens and then an international version for those that live outside the US. And I basically go through a whole itinerary. So, like everything for your flights, hotels, activities, budgeting, all of that stuff. And I break down each component into bite sized pieces that you can implement right away. So, it's overall the case of knowing the whole process and like all the bits and pieces to it. So then at the end, you have the process in hand, and then you have the power to be able to craft your own itineraries from there. You don't have to depend on another party to actually customize your own experiences.
That's amazing. So I'm curious in terms of your travel, because people when they travel, they are interested in doing different things. Is your travel based more so on group events where you have someone guiding you through the activity? Or is it you solo going and exploring, or is it a combination of the two?
It's usually a combination. So sometimes it just depends on your interest too. So for me, I like to be able to do walking tours in a city. I like to go to museums. I like to go to like theater shows. I like to try different kind of restaurants. So if there's a group tour, and walking tours are really great because usually they're free, you would just have to pay the tour guide maybe a small tip of gratuity for having an amazing tour and being an amazing guide. But yeah, usually I would do something like that. Or if I just happen to, be doing some research beforehand, then I'll just like actually map out the city. So I'll just go on Google Maps. I'll see like what kind of cool cafes are around, for instance. And then you can Google and see like, okay, what kind of events are going on? Is there an exhibition going on? Is there a show that you can maybe go watch? Is there different
Mhm.
events? So then you start planning from there. And then when you're on the ground too, when you're walking around, you just happen to see things and you're like, oh yeah, that sounds really interesting. So then you can venture off. So it's almost a mix. Like you want to have some idea of what you want to do, but then also like mix that on the ground experience as well.
Mhm. I love that. You're speaking my language when it comes to travel. I love museums. I love architecture. I love exploring. I love obviously eating. Who doesn't? But there are some folks who they plan it to a T, like every step of the way, versus like me. I like to have some things that I know that I want to do, and then I leave space open to like explore. But again, I haven't traveled solo, so keep in mind that this planning and then like leaving things open, there are other folks who are providing, their input.
Right.
On on that note of traveling with an individual, what I find that I enjoy about travel is not just the experience, but you get to share it with someone, right?
Right.
How do you feel? How have you felt? How have you kind of managed the fact that it is just you and there's no one there that you can share that experience with?
Yeah, I think it's really the case. How I got really comfortable with solo traveling was just actually taking myself out on dates just around my city. So whether it was going to a cafe, whether it was going to the movies on my own, just treating myself for the day, there was just such a sense of nourishment and enrichment in that, like just not having all those combating thoughts from someone else or having to overthink a lot of things. Like you can actually just be in your own space and just
Mm-hmm.
really enjoy yourself. And then when I travel somewhere too, it's just like, okay, I can actually just have everything on my own time. I don't feel like I'm rushed, like, oh my God, we have to go here in an hour and a half or something. Or no, I'm not really interested in this. Can we have an no, like you actually get to be the designer of your own
Mm-hmm.
day and just really take it at your own pace and really allow yourself to be entrenched in the environment that you're in compared to being dictated by what someone else wants to do. And I just feel like that's just so freeing and so empowering when you're solo.
That sounds amazing. And it's true because when you are traveling with somebody else, you have to be cognizant and considerate of, well, they have to consider you and you have to consider them, right?
Right.
In terms of what you want to do, how you want to go about the trip. And sometimes you might want to do something really bad, but something can come up. And then now you're kind of stuck either not doing that or doing something else because of this other individual. So I
Yeah.
definitely see the pros of solo travel. It's all about you and what you want to do.
Yeah, and I think it's just, I don't think it's necessarily a selfish thing. I think everyone just needs that me time because I feel it's almost the metaphor of pouring into your own cup. You can't pour from an empty cup. So if you're
Hmm.
filling your own cup, then it opens up so much more abundance that you can actually pour into other people. And it's just a beautiful thing to see that, you have so much joy in yourself and so much love for yourself, and you can really like pour that out into other people. So I think
Mhm.
everyone wins in that situation.
That is so true. And you know what? Like, I have friends who don't understand taking yourself out on dates, or like you go to eat at a restaurant solo, or you go to the movies by yourself. Like,
Yeah.
why? And that's a baby step, right? Because you would do the same thing if you're traveling solo, right? You're basically dating yourself,
Hmm.
engaging in experiences because you're interested and you're not necessarily waiting on somebody else to join you.
Right. Exactly. And that's how my traveling really started, because I just wanted to do so many things. And I either didn't have the people that shared those interests, or I just got the notion of, okay, I don't really have time, or can we set it up for another time? I'm like, no, we can't push this back anymore. I want to do this right now. So then I just started doing all the things when I wanted to,
Hmm.
like right then and there.
So I know that I am dying to take a trip to Korea. 안녕하세요. I'm looking for some friends who might want to sponsor me. But either way, I do want to go there, whether it's with, friends or solo. Like, I want that to happen.
Right.
But one of the things that comes along with travel, which you mentioned earlier, that can be a roadblock is money, right?
Yeah.
People think that you have to have a lot of money to travel. And really, it depends on what you're looking to do and what experience you're looking to have. But if you can dish out $1,300 on an iPhone, you can definitely afford to travel. It's just a matter of prioritizing.
Right.
So, how have you dealt with the financial aspect when it comes to travel?
Yeah, so I think you alluded to it. It's really what you consider a luxury. So if you want something that's, let's say you want to stay at a hotel and it's 500 a night, let's just throw that out there. If it's 500 a night and you really want to go there, then budget effectively for it. So if you know you want to go to that place at the end of the year, then what I do especially is actually have a separate account for all my travel related stuff, and just start saving up that money, because if you start making a priority, then you're not going to be like, okay, I'm just going to frivolously spend all my money on these things. No, you're actually going to allocate your energy towards saving for that goal. Or for me, I care more about the actual experiences. So really, I don't mind staying in hostels or Airbnbs, because as long as I have a safe place to be, it's central in a city, and I have a place to sleep, then I'm fine anywhere. So then I can just, walk out somewhere, take transit and have the experiences. So it's really about what luxury is to you, and then um, what your comfort level is in terms of like, okay, like what you actually need, and then all of that, those kind of things.
Those are good tips. Definitely assessing, what you're looking to get, where you're looking to stay. Because, yeah, some folks might want to have a more luxurious feel where they want everything taken care of. Then there's those who would rather spend that money on experiences and just, be in a hostel, right? You're just going to go there to sleep. If that's all you're doing, then you allocate your money towards the other experiences.
Right. Exactly.
And we talked about solo travel as a woman and some of the dangers. Are there any tips you offer for safety when you're traveling solo?
Yeah. So I alluded to it probably about 30 seconds ago, but really, so thinking for your budgeting, okay, allotting the money for that. But then when you're traveling, actually just carrying maybe two or three cards with you, and just having them separate from your main bank account, because anything can happen just generally in life. But if you're in a foreign country and you lose something, you don't want someone to pick up your card and then have access to everything that's really important to you. So having a designated travel card, or
Hmm.
cards, for your funds and everything. So in the case that something gets stolen or you lose it, at least it's just that money that you're losing. And then,
Hmm.
you can cancel that card or freeze it, and then still be able to pull funds from somewhere else. And then I really don't carry a lot on my person. So it would usually be my wallet, maybe my phone. And then I have a little, like a nice little like portable camera lens that I put on my phone, so I don't really have to carry a lot of stuff on me. because
Mm.
if you're carrying a lot of stuff on you, then you're almost making yourself look like a prime target, thinking like, okay, like she's got a lot, she has a really big bag, so I can probably, someone would come up and be like, okay, I can just pilferage that and probably sell all like the stuff
Mm-hmm.
for whatever. So yeah, just packing light as a person, and then generally too for packing light, I usually do like carry-ons and all that stuff. So yeah, and I just think in terms of safety, in terms of like your carry-on and everything, I always just do a carry-on because especially when you're in the airport, and you have to check luggage, you never know what could happen. Something could get left in the airport that you're departing from, or there's an outage with the conveyor belt. That happened to me. I had to sit in Miami airport for you know 2 hours waiting for my bag. So
Oh, wow.
if you can just have like everything actually like in the plane with you and then be able to take it when you're about to leave, yeah, that's a safety thing, like even before you get to a destination.
Yeah, these are actually all really great tips. And one that I hadn't thought of is having like a separate card or just a separate account in general solely for the travel. I've been lucky where I haven't, had anyone try to steal anything or lost anything, but things do happen. That is a really great idea to have a separate account for those expenses in the event that, you lose it or it gets stolen. Also, traveling light, that's another point that you shared that is really important to call out. I am guilty of overpacking. And I get back home and I'm like, I didn't wear even half of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's really good to plan, to really accurately plan um, how you'll be dressed, right? One, what's the weather at the location? And two, what activities do you want to engage in? So if you're just going to be going around doing tours, maybe more casual clothes. But if you want to have like a nice dinner somewhere where the attire is a little bit more elevated, then you have that. Don't be like me and throw in everything and anything.
Yeah, and it's good you bring that up too, because for your safety as well, you're considering the kind of outfits that you're wearing, maybe the shoes that you're wearing too. That
Hmm.
could that could get stares from people and maybe put you in a compromising position, especially as a woman. So usually it's the case that for my clothing and my shoes, I usually bring probably about 2 or 3 pairs of shoes and make sure that they can pretty much match all my outfits and that they're really comfortable too. And maybe if I'm going to go somewhere a little bit more elevated, then maybe I'll bring like a really nice flat or a maybe like a hooded sandal or something, but something that's really
Hmm.
comfortable, because let's say you're walking around in a short romper and some heels, you
Mm.
know, that could be a
Yeah.
little bit problematic sometimes, depending where you are. So you just
Hmm.
want to be mindful of the kind of things that you're wearing, like out and about where you are as well.
I definitely agree. I did that one time where we were, this was in Paris. We were going to a museum and we decided to walk there. And I decided that I was going to wear these heeled boots. And there's a lot of cobblestone in Paris, depending on where you
Yeah.
are. And let me tell you, I would say 15 minutes in now, I was at a store shopping for a pair of flats. I was trying to be cute, and cute did not work out for me that day.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that too, because especially in the winter, like I like a little bit of height too, so I have a couple pairs of heeled boots, and there's
Mhm.
cobblestones in various areas of London as well. Yeah, my feet were rough. After a couple days, I was like, don't bring these heels anymore.
These shoes are done. Yeah, but for those of you listening and watching, especially ladies, make sure that your attire matches what you want to do, that you have a couple of options, not, too crazy. And also keep in mind the perception of where you're going. And what I mean by that the country that you're visiting, that you understand some of the norms when it comes
Yeah,
to attire, because in certain countries, you have to be a lot more conservative than in others.
right, exactly. Like even if it's a metropolitan city, like you still want to just be cognizant of those norms and everything.
And I feel like if you're traveling solo, you also want to limit attracting attention, right? Because as a woman, you already attract attention. But then if you're adding clothing that is revealing, that can also put you in a situation. And not to say that it's okay for anything to happen to a woman because of how she's dressed, but let's face it, it does.
Right. And it's funny to that point as well. I really try to not showcase the fact that I'm an American. I just really try to blend in with the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, so many locals come up to me and they actually think that I'm an English person or that I'm a Canadian or so. I'm like, no, like I'm not really a local around here. But yeah, like I just blend into the environment so well. I'm not, super rambunctious or obnoxious
Mm-hmm.
as most foreigners would think Americans are. So I'm just like, keep a low profile and just go about your business, and that's it.
That's a good point because, in my international travels, I've seen, like, I can pinpoint and recognize other Americans because of how they behave. And it's so sad. It's kind of a little bit shameful that
Just
that's the
like,
case. You're like, I'm not, I don't know them, but I'm
no,
not
I
associated.
legit do. I'm just like, I don't know them. Like, I am not an American. I am just one of you guys, and I'm just here chilling.
So again, guys watching and listening, I hope you take these tips and when we're discussing and really apply it to your travels going forward, especially if you're American.
Yes, please,
So
for the love of God, just be a decent human being and not obnoxious.
so Angie, one of the things that I always talk about, and I actually just had this conversation with somebody, is that we need to expand our minds and broaden our minds. And a good way to do that is through our experiences, specifically getting out of our comfort zones, out of the areas that we know, traveling, outside of your state, and even further internationally. Um, can you share with us how traveling has broadened your mind or how it's helped you to develop as a person?
Yeah, it's the case. Just getting out of physical space, one, and then two, just being able to connect with people, usually that maybe you wouldn't see, or just new people that maybe you could be interacting with online, and then just having that human connection, getting out of your comfort zone in that way. And then probably my favorite way is actually through the food that you eat. So if you're
Mm.
in a different country or so, instead of going to restaurants that you may know, like let's say you're in the UK and you just be like, okay, I want to go to Five Guys or I want to go to McDonald's or something. Yes, they have some regional stuff at those places, but actually go a little bit further and maybe go into some of the local boroughs and really try some of the like London goodies or something, or
Mm-hmm.
try a different cuisine that you haven't tried before. And what I really recommend for people, especially if they're trying a new food, it's okay to try something that's somewhat familiar to you. So maybe you don't want to eat this dish, but let's say like you see a sandwich or something or a salad and it has some similar ingredients, but then it has a unique spin to it or a take on it because it's a different cuisine. Then actually just give yourself the opportunity to try that salad. It's the case you don't have to love it, but at least you tried it instead of just being like, oh no, like I'm just not going to eat that. Because I just feel that in any circumstance like that, you shouldn't limit yourself. You should just really open yourself to the possibilities, because if you don't open yourself up to the possibilities, you're missing out on so many amazing things that could be coming into your life.
That is so true. When it comes to food, especially, guys, and again, don't come for me. Like, I get that certain countries have certain things that are unique to that country, like a McDonald's or Burger King or whatever. And like, if that's your thing, okay, fine, go try the exception. But if you're constantly traveling and your go-to is McDonald's or something that you have available to in the US, what are you doing? You're doing yourself a disservice. The whole point of going out there is to experience things that are different from your norm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's funny too because for a long time I was a little bit apprehensive about eating bugs actually, and I know that's
Mm.
a big thing in a lot of cuisines. So here
Mm-hmm.
in Miami, there's a great taco shop, and they have a cricket taco. So they
Mm-hmm.
have the crickets, and they put it on a nice little mountain of guacamole, and it's in a nice homemade corn tortilla, and I tried it and I was like, oh my God, this is so delicious, because you would never know it's crickets. It just melts in
Hmm.
your mouth and is so nutty. And then when I went to Mexico, I was waiting in line to go into the Frida Kahlo Museum. And then there was a guy just selling crickets like out on the street. And I was just like, yeah, give me. So then I was just eating them out on the street. Like, it was
That's
just
awesome.
so casual and so normal for me at that point.
I've had chocolate covered crickets and they just tasted like peanuts to me.
Yeah.
But on that point, you should have an open mind. Like, obviously, you might have some hard, like, no's when it comes to foods. Maybe you have some food allergies or things that are restricted because of maybe religion. In my case, there's this Filipino dish called balut.
I
I
think I've
know
heard of
that I
it.
would never eat that because for me, the thought of a baby bird that's somewhat formed and thinking about like the crunching or like just, sorry for those of
Oh,
you that are squeamish, it doesn't align with me. So that I know for me is like a hard no. But for the most part, I recommend to folks like be open, try something once. If you don't like it after you try it, that's fair. But if you judge something like immediately without having tried it, then again, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? You're missing out on a potential experience.
yeah, exactly. I think it extends even to connecting with different kind of people too. You shouldn't just
Hmm.
totally write off people. It's about, yeah, just get to know that person. You never know what kind of connection you could make of that person. They could really impact your life. So I always just say, like, yeah, be open to everything. Of course, be cognizant of what's going on, but still be open.
Yes, and that's the whole point of traveling, right? Because you're looking to engage in new experiences, to interact with different people, to get outside of out of what you know. And so part of that is being open to the various experiences from food to language to clothing to the individuals that you're interacting with, and even cultural norms, right? So certain countries and certain cultures have specific norms that they follow, so having an idea of that as well, because you don't want to offend anyone.
Right. And I think that's something I learned a bit more in my coursework in college, kind of through my food classes, but then also taking sociology as well. It's just that cultural competence piece is something that so many people maybe don't actively practice or are really like proactive about. And I just think it's so important because we're not all the same. Like, everyone has different traditions, different norms, and all of those things should be respected. It shouldn't just be like,
Hmm.
okay, like, I'm judging you for this, this, and this. No, like, this is someone's norms, this is someone's culture, this is a part of someone's being, so you should respect that.
Yes, guys, definitely be respectful when you travel and do some research. Make sure that you're not going there and being a dumb American. Don't come for me.
And
So
don't come for me
Angie,
either. We're just trying to
don't
help
come for
you out.
Angie. So we talked about the fact that Angie has these two programs. She has one that's about domestic travel, that process, and one about international travel, that process. And we talked about, potential fear or hesitation with traveling solo, especially, if you're a woman. Angie, is there anything that you recommend for folks to do to help them cope with the feeling, the emotions they might experience with either fear or hesitation?
Yeah, so I would just say, we talked about this at the top, but just really take those baby steps. So it's not the case that you have to go to Europe, right away. Just do something locally in your city at first. So, yeah, take yourself out on a date to a movie, to a restaurant or something, and just get comfortable in that. And then take the next step and maybe go to a couple towns over and see how you feel there and have like a little staycation, treat yourself in that way, and then work your way to going to another state. So, you're still in the US, but you're experiencing another state. So it's with each level, you're just getting more and more comfortable. And then you're learning things um, at a pretty reasonable pace too, instead of going, from 0 to 10 right away. You're actually just going, okay, like 1, 2, 3, 4. And then when you feel really comfortable, then you can start going out of the country, and then you already have those adaptive measures in place, and then you can just really um, adapt them to anywhere you go, especially if you have a process in place already.
That's great. Baby steps to get to the goal, one step at a time. That advice can apply to anything in life. So that's great.
Yeah.
Angie, so you have these two courses. Is there
Mhm.
anything else you have that you're planning and that you're wanting to share?
Yeah, so I do have a resource coming out soon. It's going to be a free resource, and it's going to be the most useful apps that I found for different aspects of travel planning and everything. And then probably sometime, maybe in the next few months, I might actually do a little bit of planning, um, actually for people. It won't be a full itinerary, but it'll probably be things like, okay, mapping out what kind of activities you want to do, or maybe hotels. So basically, it would be a rough draft of, different kind of possibilities for hotels and everything, nothing concrete, but at least it gives you a roadmap to be able to have, okay, you can just be like, okay, I have these hotels maybe that I want to plan in the future, and then reference back to them, and then be able to plan my trips effectively, instead of going through the
Mm,
whole itinerary on your own. So that'll be
that's
something
awesome.
that I'll think about in the next few months.
That sounds great. I mean, yes, you're offering them sort of like a starter guide to get the ball rolling, right? To get them comfortable on top of the courses that they could take. And then you have this freebie coming up to help on top of that with information, how
Yeah.
they can use these apps to help with their travel planning.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So lots of exciting things in the works.
so Angie, how can folks get in touch with you and connect with you?
Yeah, so Instagram is the best place because I'm always, finding like little gems and just really interesting things on there. So my travel Instagram is at the Flexitarian Travels. And if you're a foodie like we are, then I also have a food Instagram, and that's Eats with Angie with 3 A's.
Yes, I followed your flexitarian and I forgot about the food. I do, so I gotta go follow because I one of my okay, this is a side note. When it comes to Instagram, the things that I look at apart from like motivational stuff is animals and food.
So you can't go wrong because food is just like, oh my God, like just so comforting. And then animals are just so fluffy and cute. And you're just, oh my God, so uplifted.
Yes, I feel like if I was rich, I probably would have a farm with like a ton of animals.
Oh, that'd be sweet.
Anyway, off to the segue, coming back to it. So we're gonna put all of Angie's details and the podcast details and the YouTube details so you guys can follow, like, subscribe to her. If you're traveling, definitely check out what she has to offer. If you need a little more in-depth guidance, she has these two courses again to help with both domestic and international travel. Angie, any last thought that you want to share?
No, I think we pretty much got everything, but I just really just love being able to share some insights with everybody, and just really be able to help in any way I can, because I don't really feel that travel should be reserved for, the top 5 or 10% or so. It really can be a gift for anyone to be to really enjoy and be enriched by. So I really
Mhm.
want to be able to give that access to people instead of it almost being trade secrets. I'm like, no, like you can just give access to people.
Yes, that is so true. And I'm so glad that you are, providing this information for folks and educating folks really so that they can
Yeah.
travel more and take advantage. As she said, it's not just for the 5, 10%. We can all do it. It's just a matter of prioritizing.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Angie. This conversation was so fun. And obviously, I learned, especially when it comes to the financial aspect of travel.
Yeah, I think that's almost like the overlooked part, because everyone sees all the really fabulous pictures And that's great, but then you think, well, how can I actually do it? You know,
Mm-hmm.
the money doesn't grow on trees, so you have to have some way of being able to finance it and everything.
Exactly, exactly. So, guys, if you want to learn a little more information and continue to follow to get her tips, to get her resources, again, make sure you connect with Angie on her platform, which is IG, both for travel and for food.
Yes.
Woo woo! Thanks again, Angie, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad to have you. All right, folks, as I always say, preparation, accountability, execution, and result are keys to your success. Until next time.